In a world unlike our own, something strange occurred, something none of its inhabitants could have foreseen or even noticed. For years, the world watched as cannabis became a cultural phenomenon. No one knows where it came from. It started gaining notoriety 200 years ago. It changed everything, both good and bad. Above all else, one change stood out: greed. Greed had always been a thing on this planet, but it never got out of control. No one sought power, fame, and fortune. They would cheat, steal, and borrow just enough to live comfortably and stress-free. Wealth could buy you these things, but very few throughout history went after these things. The majority of its inhabitants just wanted enough money to have a warmer home, a fuller plate, and enough dignity to dream, to trade, to improve, but never to hoard. It was the same for any business that existed throughout time, even the ones that made lots of money. There was competition between companies, but it was friendly and fair. No monopolies existed, and because of this, there was plenty of jobs. It wasn't a perfect world. People still argued, still cheated, still reached a little farther than they should, still fought for their piece of the pie. There have been battles here and there between nations, but never wars. Conflicts were quickly resolved and relinquished. Crime existed, but never spiraled out of control. Then cannabis entered the building. The entertainment and food industries exploded with wealth, and then greed, once restrained, began its patient unraveling. These industries wanted more, and the competition got nasty. It eventually spilled over to other industries as well when they saw what it did for these companies. Corporations which were rare started to spring up all over the place. Cannabis also brought good to the planet. It brought neighbors together, sparked new ideas, and healed aches and pain, kept life simple, and brought joy and relaxation to the masses. These newly formed corporations said greed was a good thing and should be encouraged. The crime rate started rising all across this planet, and corporations stated that cannabis is to blame to cover up their evil deeds. Addiction was not really a problem at first, but as greed started to slowly flare up, so did addiction. This led to chaos, destruction, and widespread panic, with the media leading the charge. So a then young man, simply known as Gorgon, came up with a solution: a one-world government. He at the time began a campaign to push for a one-world government relentlessly and poured tons of money into the campaign. This was a crazy idea at first, but other world leaders slowly began to agree, which was odd at first because the public never saw this coming, and no one knows why other nations began to slowly, over time, agree. No explanation was ever offered as to why all existing nations suddenly agreed, why years of resistance collapsed into quiet consensus, why those in power, without warning, chose to loosen their grip. History recorded the decision, but not the reason. What mattered was the outcome. A world war, once gathering like a storm on the horizon, stalled, then faded. The unthinkable was postponed. Borders softened. Cannons went silent, and you were free to go wherever you pleased. And when a single currency replaced 1,000 competing ones, trade flowed freely, markets stabilized, and for the first time in living memory, the world moved in the same direction. But that did not mean everything was sunshine and lollipops. So again, high-ranking officials blamed cannabis for everything that was wrong with society. The public had mixed reactions. Fights ensued, and this split friends and families apart. The dinner table and social gatherings became war zones. Then one day, out of the shadows, the powers that be set a plan into motion, and it was meticulously crafted, brilliantly executed, and its ripple effects would alter the course of history forever. It all began one day in the dead of night, out of nowhere. Drones started releasing a mysterious chemical from the skies, a substance, that was undetectable to the human senses was sprayed everywhere, all across the planet. Over the course of 3.5 years, cannabis seeds could no longer sprout and plants slowly started to wither away. The chemical became an extinction event, wiping out every cannabis plant and condemning its seeds to oblivion. Fear gripped the halls of power as conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. The masses speculated, but the truth, it remained hidden. No one could grow cannabis anymore, and the silence from those in control only fueled the frenzy. What began as whispers of suspicion ignited a new hippie-like movement, a desperate rebellion driven by love for the plant and disdain for the lies. As the final remnants of cannabis dwindled, the government turned the blame onto the people, branding them junkies and traffickers to justify the inexplicable disappearance. Amid the chaos, one man dared to defy the tide. Known only as the Professor, he preserved a single joint, a relic of a fading era, hoping one day he can somehow bring it back in case something went wrong.